The Mediation Directive was adopted on 21st of May 2008 with two primary objectives stated in Article 1. To facilitate access to alternative dispute resolution and to promote the amicable settlements of disputes by encouraging the use of mediation and by ensuring a balanced relationship between mediation and judicial proceedings. Now, 11 years after adoption of the directive, we are witnessing wide diversity of mediation in Europe. Each member state has created its own unique mediation model. And in fact, in the European Union of 28 member states, there are 28 different models of mediation. Now let's have a closer look at 7 most specific mediation diversity aspects in 6 countries: Austria, Bulgaria, the Czech Republic, Italy, Lithuania, and Latvia. Requirements raised towards a mediator differ significantly across Europe. What are requirements to become a mediator in your country?
To become a mediator in Lithuania, a person should be enrolled into Lithuanian mediators list. Formal requirements for enrolling are these: a high education, impeachable reputation, 40 hours of mediation trainings, and as well exam, which consists of 2 parts, like test and practical task. As well, some exceptions are applied, like for lecturers, as well for judges who has experience in their work no less than 3 years and some introductory training. And in regard of attorneys at law, bailiffs and notaries, the requirement of exam is not applied if they have no less than 3 years of experience.
In Bulgaria, to become a mediator, one has to have passed a certification course by an organization that has been certified by the Ministry of Justice. Additionally, there is the requirement for lack of any criminal record.
Oh yes, well, in Italy, to become a mediator, you need to take a course, which is a 60-hour course, which combines both theory and practice. And in order to accede to such a course, which are organized by mediation centers accredited by the ministry, you must have a 3-year degree in any kind of university, so medicine, law, arts, or whatever. Besides that, some categories of professional are ex lege able to become mediators without taking any particular additional course, like for example, lawyers, they can become mediators within the barrister association, which is based on regional grounds. So it's basically the combination of these 2 elements: a 3-year degree, university degree, plus some courses which are not very long in nature, but sometimes are quite expensive.
A comparative research shows that differences are in age, education, training, language skills, and even in aspects of reputation of candidate mediator. Which institutions registers mediators in your country?
For Austria, we have to adapt the question a little bit. I have to ask what the professional legal basis for the activity as a mediator is, because this regulatory stadium makes it possible to find out the institution certifying the mediators. So for registered mediators, for instance, this will be the Ministry of Justice, or for advocates, the Bar Association. So it depends.
Well, there are 2 institutions certifying mediators in the Czech Republic. The first one is the Czech Bar Association for advocates, and the second one is the Czech Ministry of Justice. However, there are also many educational institutions who are offering mediation trainings.
Council of Certified Mediators registers certified mediators in Latvia, and Council of Certified Mediators is a body elected by all mediators in Latvia.
Our research shows that mediators in Europe are mostly registered by governmental institutions, and the register is a subject to requirements of laws and bylaws. Could you describe a form and contents of an exam for mediators in your country?
So in Austria there is no final exam, so the students have to attend theoretical and practical classes, and at the end of their training they have to mediate a real case under supervision and document it.
In Bulgaria, the exam is comprised of 2 major parts: a written and an oral part. In the written part, you have basically a multiple choice test. You have also a written part with open-ended questions, and you additionally have a mock mediation as part of your oral examination, which further includes a presentation on a topic that is part of the curriculum that has been approved by the Ministry of Justice.
In Latvia, to become a certified mediator, a candidate must pass a 3-level test. In the first part, the mediator shall answer 30 multiple-choice questions, and if 24 questions are correct, the candidate proceeds to the second level. In the second level, the candidate writes essay about 2 questions about theory of mediation, and then if the candidate receives 7 points out of 10, the candidate proceeds to the third part of the exam. And in the third part, the candidate participates in mock mediation session, during which the candidate shows all the knowledge and skills of the real mediator. And then again, if the candidate receives at least 7 points out of 10, the candidate can become a real certified mediator in Latvia.
One can see that the largest differences are in structure and contents of an exam for a candidate that could become a registered mediator. According to Article 3.a of a mediation directive, mediation shall be a voluntary process. Is it indeed voluntary, or could it be at times mandatory?
Since 2010, mediation is mandatory in Italy for disputes concerning 14 different subject matters. Real estate disputes, inheritance disputes, medical malpractice disputes. But since in these subjects matter, mediation is a condition precedent to litigation. But since 2013, in order to satisfy this condition precedent, parties only have to attend an initial session with the mediator, at the end of which parties are free to opt out mediation and start litigation, or to decide to go on with mediation.
At the moment, I could say that we have all kinds of mediation in Lithuania, both voluntary and mandatory. By the way, mandatory mediation will be introduced only from the 1st of January 2020, and only for family matters, but for other kind of civil disputes, it is completely voluntary.
A court has a possibility to order a meeting with a mediator, which such a meeting lasts only like 3 hours. But mediation itself is still voluntary. But participants cannot be forced to do mediation, but refusal to meet the mediator can be followed by financial sanctions.
When the same parties apply for mediation in different EU member states, can they expect to receive the same quality performance of mediators? What are obligations and liability of mediators?
According to the legislative decree number 28, mediators have different obligations toward the mediation provider they are working for. So they are obliged to correspond to any request of the mediation provider director. Moreover, they have a general duty of confidentiality and of impartiality. There are no special provision with regard to civil liability of mediators in Italy, but mediation providers need to have an insurance for civil liability up to 500,000 euros. And I think this is a very interesting issue because last year we had the first liability claim against a mediator that has been held responsible by a first instance court for the invalidity of the agreement reached by the parties.
In Bulgaria, the general obligation that a mediator has to comply with do not differ from those in different countries. There's no specific civil liability insurance that one has to have, and there has been no cases so far that has triggered the civil liability of a mediator.
So in Austria, the mediator has, for example, the duty to inform the parties about the essence of mediation and its legal consequences, and also the duty to refer to counseling if it's needed. And yes, the registered mediators have to take out liability insurance, but there are no cases about liability at the Supreme Court.
Interesting. An understanding about mediators' liability concept and scope widely differs across Europe. This means that parties in mediation are treated differently depending on which country they attend a mediation session. Is there any authority supervising professional performance of mediators?
Yes, the main institution responsible for development of mediation policy is Ministry of Justice. For the mediator's qualification, evaluation and enrollment is responsible state-granted legal aid service. But in regard of investigation of claims, in regard of mediators' improper behavior during the mediation process, Special Commission on Evaluation of Mediators' Activities is created, and it consists of 5 members representing Ministry of Justice, Bar Association, National Court Administration, State-Guaranteed Legal Aid Service, and definitely Lithuanian Chamber of Mediators.
Yeah, the supervision authorities are the same ones as the certifying authorities, so the Czech Bar Association and the Czech Ministry of Justice. In addition, there is also the probation and mediation service, whose employees, so no external mediators, provide mediation in criminal cases.
No, we don't have any authority. Mediation providers are supposed to supervise the quality of the mediators that are working for them. And mediation providers are subject to the control of the Ministry of Justice, and they have to refer to the Ministry of Justice or the data and statistics concerning their activity.
Well, there's even diversity in supervision aspect. Countries are free to introduce such supervisory model which they find practical and efficient. Are there any mandatory requirements for mediators to raise their quality and experience? Or is it the contrary? Once a mediator, forever a mediator?
In Austria, registered mediators have to attend 50 units of training every 5 years. So there is a mandatory requirement, but for non-registered mediators, they don't have the obligation to take part in further trainings.
In Bulgaria, there are no additional requirements for mediators to raise their professional qualification.
In Latvia, each certified mediator is obliged to attend ongoing studies and mediation courses. Every 5 years, certified mediators must undergo so-called attestation, and during the attestation, mediators are checked whether they have attended 100 hours of studies. And if they have, they can pass the attestation and receive the next certificate for the next 5 years.
So mostly the European countries support continuous learning need for mediators. These are great news, meaning that practical mediators follow latest developments in mediation and raise their academic and professional quality. Mediation is still new and growing instrument. What can we expect from our national legislators and the European Union institutions in terms of development of mediation?
So in Austria, we observe a tendency to stop the uncontrolled growth of different systems of dispute resolution, and there is not a common policy yet, but some institutions start to think about combining instruments and methods.
In Bulgaria, currently there are discussions about providing for mandatory mediation as part of specific cases.
Yeah, in the Czech Republic, we are facing growing number of disputes between construction companies, owners of shopping malls, and tenants about conditions of the rented business properties. Nowadays, people also tend to solve internal disputes in companies with the help of mediation, And last but not least, universities are focusing on teaching mediation, creating special courses and using new technology to educate future mediators, which is also find its reflection in positive reactions on the outcomes of this Erasmus Plus project.
Mediation and mandatory mediation in particular is always under debate in Italy. So the recent news is that there is a project to reduce the scope of mandatory mediation in Italy. But mediators and mediation providers are somehow fighting against this project, and they are doing their best to spread mediation and get better results out of their mediation services.
You just caught us in the middle of reforms, so there are plenty of news and new things in the area of mediation in Lithuania. For example, mandatory family mediation, as we already talked, then the list of mediators for the whole Lithuania. Also, the news are introduced in administrative mediation sector. So there are plenty of different things that are new for us.
Well, many steps shall be taken and are taken in order to ensure quality, efficiency and popularity, increase of awareness of using mediation. Hot topic in the European Union currently and in Europe as such currently is whether to introduce mandatory opt-out mediation forms at the statutory level, as Italy has done, well, with several attempts. Now we're doing this in Greece. We as well in Lithuania. We will introduce family mandatory mediation from next year. And this raises certain challenges to the system, to the infrastructure of mediation. So these main topics as quality of the service, availability of mediators, accessibility of the service will remain most probably one of the hottest topics for mediation development in recent years.
Mediation keeps developing. So are we. Only by mutual efforts we can apply this wonderful dispute resolution tool for amicable settlements of controversies and restoration of peace in society.